Part of the campaign by the CIA against Nicaragua is through paramilitary units and squads of former Somocista soldiers who are being trained in Honduras. And their campaign is against these Mosquito Indians, and hundreds of mosquitoes have been killed by those squads in cross-border raids. One of the reasons why that the Nicaraguan government has been forced, I believe, by these campaigns to move a lot of these people away from the areas where they're in danger is because of those activities, not because of a policy of the Nicaraguan government. It's as a result
What
of
would their reason
the
be to have genocide against these tribes, the current government in Nicaragua? The State Department hasn't given any hypotheses about why they would be engaging in this.
I can't see any motive for it.
Yeah, it seems strange.
Well, they pretend and would have us believe that the Nicaraguan government is a totalitarian, one-party, top-down dictatorial rule, and that they have no wish.
John, since the time we did that interview with Louis Wolff, there's been quite a few revelations about CIA covert operations in Nicaragua. Can you comment on those? I think there were some stories in these times about some of the things that the CIA was up to there. Even more.
The point is that the CIA's budget, it's been announced that the CIA, the President signed an order on the 1st of December ordering the CIA into full paramilitary covert action against Nicaragua from Honduras, organizing mercenaries to destabilize the countryside, to counter the Cuban aggression in that country, is what they announced was the justification. And the budget they were given was $19 million. I compare that with the $14 million that I was given in 1975
in Angola
for the Angolan operation. The parallels are quite striking. You know, there were parallels with the Angolan operation in the Bay of Pigs, for example, and other covert actions. But then Guatemala was different, and Iran was different. So you know, each situation is different. But here, we have it's so close. They're working from Honduras. We were working from Zaire and Kinshasa. They're working with ex-Samocistas. We were working with the Portuguese exiles, the Portuguese who had fled, for example, creating an army out of these people. Also, they have, quote, mercenaries, but actually soldiers who were sent from Argentina, for example, and Venezuela and Chile and Colombia. To join this force. We had people coming from various places, from France, for example, and of course the South African force. They're functioning. I could map out the office for you, the program, the international program. Some things that I would observe if you've read my book is that such an operation is global. The commander would not be sitting in Honduras running the thing. The commander of the Nicaraguan task force will be in Washington. He will be sending agents all around the world, coordinating different aspects of this thing. They'll be sending cables to every station in the world, advising the chief of station what his activities should be vis-a-vis the local police and the local president and the local press, to create an atmosphere supporting to the greatest extent possible what they're doing, seeking arms that aren't attributable, seeking sources of news comments and releases that can be put together in white papers to persuade. And then the bottom line, that the justification Reagan has given and the CIA have given for doing this intervention is to counter the Cuban activities in Nicaragua. But see, the point is that there are not going to be any Cubans die in this thing. I believe it said that there are 2,000 Cubans in Nicaragua now. They're functioning to help build an airport and no doubt military advising, although I've not seen that confirmed anywhere.
A lot of doctors, medical personnel.
Doctors and medical personnel and teachers and whatnot.
And from Italy and several other countries as well. It's not just Cubans that have gone to Nicaragua, but a variety of countries.
The Nicaraguan arms, it's been shown, are not coming from the Soviet Union. They're buying them from France and Italy and all kinds of other places. Or are they coming from Cuba? This has been proven. But the point is that this program of the CIA is not going to be killing Cubans. It's going to be killing Nicaraguans. It's not going to be killing Nicaraguan officials, not that many Nicaraguan soldiers. It's going to be destabilizing the countryside, blowing up bridges, ambushing buses. If they follow the pattern that they have in other places, there'll be some schools bombed and marketplaces bombed to destabilize the economy so it can't function, so the network and fabric of society will break down.
They kill village leaders. I've read
They
articles
kill
about that.
the Phoenix program being duplicated, killing village leaders, holding people out and executing them to terrorize them from cooperating with the government.
And their families.
And their families.
1898, President McKinley orders U.S. troops to invade Cuba. 1905, President Theodore Roosevelt orders the invasion of Honduras. 1912, President Taft orders the invasion of Nicaragua. 1914 to 18, President Wilson invades Haiti, Cuba, and Panama. 1924 to 26, President Coolidge invades Nicaragua and Honduras. 1954, Eisenhower approves the overthrow of the elected government of Guatemala. 1961, Kennedy approves a CIA invasion of Cuba. 1965, Johnson invades the Dominican Republic. 1973, Nixon approves the overthrow of the elected government of Chile. 1981, President Reagan approves the CIA secret war against Nicaragua. 1983, President Reagan orders the invasion of Grenada. Nixon had said of Somoza, "Now that's the kind of anti-communist we like to see down there." When the earthquake struck, the return on this investment was beyond Somoza's wildest dreams. The United States gave him emergency aid of $57 million, most of it out of U.S. government funds. But the Nicaraguan Treasury reported receiving only $16 million. There was no inquiry about the missing $41 million. Indeed, more of the same just kept rolling in. With the support of the Carter administration, the International Monetary Fund gave Somoza $65 million, just a few months before he fled the country and while he was bombing his own people.
The earthquake.
This was Somoza's National Guard, or Death Squad. Funded as part of America's foreign aid program, they were the instrument of American policy in Nicaragua for almost half a century. Now reorganized in Honduras and paid by the CIA, they are described by President Reagan as freedom fighters.
A whole range of crimes were committed here. For example, there were National Guards who not only killed Nicaraguans, but also tortured them. There were cases where people's skin was scraped off with shaving knives, alive. Others where their eyes were gouged out with spoons. Others were castrated. There was a range of cruelty here which I don't think would fit into an encyclopedia.
Yes, I have an opinion about this aggression. Let President Reagan spare a thought that he has children. Let him think that he is supporting genocide. They were murderers here. They had no pity for the young people. It was a crime in Nicaragua to be young.
Since the Sandinistas came to power, they have let go 2,500 National Guardsmen, and many of them went straight to Honduras, where they were signed up and armed by the CIA. President Reagan has said, "We do not seek to overthrow the government of Nicaragua." This week, November the 15th, 1983, more than 4,000 American combat troops will have arrived in Honduras for what are called maneuvers close to the border with Nicaragua. American troops, says President Reagan, will strike back if they are attacked. President Kennedy gave the same assurance 20 years ago, shortly before the beginning of America's longest war.
Why do you think?
If Archbishop Romero's support for ordinary people made him a communist, then these three American nuns and a religious lay worker were also communists. Indeed, Jean Kirkpatrick, America's representative at the UN, suggested that the nuns were communist sympathizers. They were raped and murdered by members of the National Guard of El Salvador, a country where 35,000 people have been the victims of death squads since 1980. The American ambassador at the time was Robert White. He said, "The chief killers here are the government security forces. They are the ones responsible for the deaths of thousands upon thousands of young people who have been executed merely on the suspicion that they are leftists. Are we really going to be part of all that?" For saying that, the ambassador was sacked. This year, the Reagan administration wants to give to the El Salvador regime more than $200 million in aid. By contrast, there are no death squads in Nicaragua, where all American aid has been stopped.
His story, the most controversial of the past year, because after investigating the origins of the crack epidemic, he claimed he found a link leading right to the CIA.
Men who were working for the CIA's army were responsible for bringing all that cocaine into Los Angeles that sparked the crack epidemic.
The CIA's army, Webb says, were the Contras, the anti-communist rebels fighting the government of Nicaragua back in the 1980s, an army founded and funded by the CIA. Webb wrote that some Contra supporters smuggled cocaine to America to raise money for their cause.
The CIA has been bringing drugs into this country.
As then CIA Director John Deutsch discovered, it's an accusation that rings true for many, especially for some in the African-American community. And Webb's story...
Was the CIA willing to poison our cities and crack cocaine?
On the basis of what you learned, do you believe that there was a conscious decision, a meeting where someone sat down and said, we're going to poison the youth of Black America and here's how we're going to do it?
No, I don't. These guys were looking to raise money, and I don't think it mattered to them where they did it. They just went where they could raise the money.
Gary Webb says... Senate investigation, led by John Kerry of Massachusetts, found that individuals who provided support for the Contras were involved in drug trafficking, and that one or another agency of the U.S. government had information regarding the involvement, either while it was occurring or immediately thereafter. Incredibly, according to Senator Kerry, smugglers even used the U.S. government's own airlift operation at El Salvador's Ilopango airport to get cocaine back across the American border. This drug enforcement agent patrolled that same airport in the mid-'80s.
It was just non-stop traffic coming and going, and nobody ever inspected their planes or their cargo or whatever.
Cele Castillo told Dateline he observed rampant drug smuggling at that airport.
Well, what we had was that we had Contra pilots flying out of Ilopango, smuggling drugs into the U.S., cocaine specifically.
He claims the smuggling was so open it had to be condoned by the U.S. government. Castillo says planes would arrive filled with supplies for the Contras, then leave carrying cocaine for America, bound for military airfields in Florida and Texas, offloaded out of sight of the law, then shipped to California and other points in the U.S. And there's more. Castillo says when he reported all of this to his bosses at the DEA, he was told to ignore it.
So you were told point blank?
Point blank, stay away from it. It's a covert operation being run by the White House.
In a letter to Dateline, the Drug Enforcement Administration said it has vigorously investigated, and no evidence has ever been found to substantiate Mr. Castillo's charges. As for the CIA, it's denied ever aiding or condoning drug smuggling.
Reports were reaching the highest councils of our government, in the White House and in the Justice Department. There is no question of that. I can document that.
The White House and Justice Department disputed Kerry's report at the time, but he still believes some government officials turned a blind eye towards drug deals in the 1980s.